All right. So this is going to be part two of setting up our front end for the smart contract that we worked on developing. So we're definitely going to have a part three, given I did run into some issues today, but I'm going to walk over what I did today and hopefully be able to share a little bit of value as well as, for those who are maybe looking into setting this stuff up for themselves, giving you some reassurance. It's not, the easiest thing in the world to grasp. I am still learning myself and, we're having to troubleshoot. So it is all good, but without further ado, let's just dive straight into things. So I was just reading back over some of the initial stuff that ChatGPT walked me through. This is where we had left off yesterday, where we had essentially set up the React, which this looks a little bit different just because we've made some edits, but we had set up the React page, which was the front end to interact with the contract. And the only thing that we had allowed it to do up to this point was connecting our wallet. So today it prompted us for setting up the function of being able to mint the NFTs from the site. And honestly, after reading back through this, I think I see where I might have overcomplicated things, trying to get too much clarification, but I'll just kind of walk you guys through, how today went. So the first step it had walked us through was showing us how to set up the contract so we could get the ABI and the contract address and add it to the app.js file that we had over here. But the problem is I did not have any Ethereum to do this live. And so I wanted to get some test Ethereum. So it had showed us a little bit of the process here because I clarified, do I need to deploy the contract? And it said yes. So it explained we could use a test network. It suggested a couple up here. We had actually ended up going with a test network called, it started with an S, however you say it, Sepolia. So yeah, I'm definitely seeing that I may have overcomplicated things with the details. Obviously, I was learning how to navigate things myself. So yeah, going back through this, it had walked us through how to set up the test network, which to save some time, I'm just going to show you guys how I had gone through the process. Because initially what it had prompted us to do was connect a metamask wallet, which we had already had our metamask wallet set up from yesterday. So it had us grab the wallet, and then this initially said Ethereum mainnet. So we had switched to, what is this? We had switched to Sepolia, given that was, the most easily readily available test network that showed up. And then once we had switched over to here, at the time, we didn't have any test ETH set up yet. So it had directed us to find a faucet that could give us that test ETH. Now, initially, it had given us the framework for the Goerli. I don't know why the names are so weird with these test nets. But we had initially tried setting this test net up, which we had some issues because first we had gone to add the network. And then, when I typed it into here, I did see it. But when I was pressing it, nothing actually happened when I first pressed it. So this is new here. It's kind of weird. But it's looking like I would have had the option to add it now. Maybe. Nonetheless, though, Sepolia was what we had gone with. If anybody does figure out how to set up the test net that was suggested, I mean, feel free to comment it in the comments. I'll also have the Discord up soon. So, I would love to be able to work with people who can obviously help make this process a little easier because ChatGPT is a great tool, but I do like being able to talk to people too. And there's definitely people with more experience than I who can, be a valuable resource to be able to talk with and learn myself. So nonetheless, we had gone through a little bit of troubleshooting after we had attempted to go with Borelli, and that's essentially what this is here. Now I'm just trying to find where we had pivoted. Where did we pivot? Okay, here it is. So after going through several attempts, we were here for, I think, well over an hour. We had pivoted to, like I said, going with the Sepolia test network. So we'd opened up MetaMask. We had converted it over, like I mentioned, to Sepolia here. And then we had selected the test network. So after we had everything set up on the MetaMask, next we had to connect our wallet to, like I said, a faucet, yeah, think like literally like a sink faucet running water. It's just a place you can go to get this test ETH. It's specifically designed, I believe, to be able to allow people to test contracts without having to spend money on actual ETH. So we had gone through quite a few different faucets, given this link didn't even work. And then this one did, but when we had clicked it, it had prompted us to having at least 0.001 ETH in our wallet, which we didn't. And I want to do this on zero cost, like I mentioned. We are being very minimalistic, but again, given that's just the situation we're in, we're just trying to play our cards. So we've gone through here. I let ChatGPT know what we were encountering, and it suggested several different faucets, but most of them were still requiring this 0.001 ETH just to make sure that it wasn't a bot wallet. So we'd use, I think it was this link here, which this is just a bunch of different faucets that are available, but again, most of them still do require the 0.001. So finally, we had let ChatGPT know, and it had given us the solution in the form of the Chainlink Sepolia Faucet. So we'd essentially gone through Chainlink, and we were able to go through the steps that it had prompted us for, which was pretty much just grabbing the stuff here, entering the wallet address, and then had us verify we were human, ran us through a few tests, and once we were good to go on that end, it sent 0.1 of the Sepolia ETH to us. So that was the most successful thing we probably did today. I know it doesn't sound like much, but it did take me a good amount of time. I probably could have done something else to just make the $5 to buy the 0.001 ETH, but regardless, we found a free way to do it. So, hopefully my hours long worth of work saves you guys the time in just a few minutes watching this. But after that, we had the test ETH ready to go in the MetaMask wallet. So next, it had prompted us to go to Remix, where we had just grabbed the contract that we had worked with. And then after getting the contract ready to go, we compiled it and hold on, let me just show you guys here. So after we got the code ready to go, we compiled it, and then we've gone over to deploy the contract. And the way we had set up deploying the contract was instead of picking one of these Remix VM, the virtual machine, which is pretty much just like our on-site sandbox to play with, we had selected the injected provider for metamask. So after that, it had prompted us to link our metamask to Remix. And once we had connected, it had automatically loaded in our wallet here, and we were able to deploy the contract. So after deploying the contract, it had prompted us to grab the address, and then we had gone back over to the terminal to start working here. And this is where things got a little bit janky because, like I mentioned, as I was reviewing this before starting to record, I noticed back up at the top, if I can get back up to there. So I'd noticed at the top, instead of messing with the terminal, it had just directed us to be able to make edits, to the contract, which this is so much simpler than what we had ended up doing. So kind of wish I'd gone back to just read the initial instructions it gave us, because it looks like instead of copying pasting the ABI, which is what I have here, this is super, super long. And it just made the contract kind of hard to read on the AP, on the app.js, which even when I tried copy and pasting this into ChatGPT for it to read, it was too long for it to actually look over it and read for us. So lesson learned, that'll just be an adjustment that we make on our next session. But yeah, we pretty much could have just kept, wow, I'm actually like, I can't be that annoyed with myself because I am brand new, but I'm just noticing how simple this looks. Because we would have just literally copy and pasted the address here. We would have had the file here for the ABI. Everything else would have stayed the exact same. And then connect to the contract. After the wallet's connected, we'll instantiate the contract using ether.js. Here's the updated code. So yeah, this looks more or less the same. So this is just, like I said, walking us through the steps of setting this up in the SRC folder here, instead of just putting this all together in the initial code. That honestly might solve the issue. It could. Okay. Well, nonetheless, I'll show you guys. I don't even know if I should show you guys what not to do, but it is a documentation, so I wouldn't recommend doing what I'll show you next, but this is just, again, the chain of events that we have walked through. So as you guys can see, we got a little lost in the whole process, like I said, of just asking for a little bit too much hands-on instead of going back to the first initial instructions, which would have kept things significantly simpler. But nonetheless, hold on. I'm trying to remember where we had actually gotten to, where I was showing you guys. Okay, yeah, so we deployed the contract, and then it had prompted us to run this, which, again, it didn't have us run this for the initial instruction. So I thought it was kind of strange. We might have even ran this yesterday, if I'm remembering correctly. But nonetheless, this is where it had prompted us to paste this code. And again, we had put all the ABI information here, which, again, it just made it kind of hard to read. But we'd walk through this process. And again, this is just me asking for clarification on how to do everything properly. I think this actually might have been what we had uninstalled, because initially, we'll see. I hope this isn't too confusing, given I am kind of all over the place. But I let it know that it did seem excessively long after we had pasted the ABI, but it let us know that was normal. Again, in hindsight, it would have been better to just create a separate space here under the SRC file. But again, we're learning. So next, after pasting the contract address and the ABI, we had attempted to run it, but then we had gotten this message here, which this is, I believe, from the fact that we had set up the port that it had given us with the 3000 for our initial React site, the localhost 3000, and we had edited the code. So again, I'm not like a super tech savvy person, but again, that was the message it gave us, and it had let us know to just press yes and get another available port. But when I pressed yes, it didn't give me another available port. It actually just gave me like a really long error, and I did not know how to interpret this. As you guys can see, it's a lot of words. So it had next walked us through some troubleshooting. First, it had told us to make sure that this line was correct in the code, which it was. It was this line here. And then for the providers, I didn't really know where to find this on the contract because I couldn't see it myself. And again, this just made it very difficult to actually read. But I hypothesized it was going to be somewhere towards this bottom portion of the contract. But again, I let it know. I tried pasting the code first, and it had just given us this message that it was too long to actually generate a response, which, I mean, this just goes on and on and on. So understandable. So I let it know pasting the code took, it was just too long for the chat to be able to read. So next, it had suggested just pasting what we believe to be relevant. And so I tried pasting the portion of the code that I thought relevant here. And then it had next walked us through some explanations, I believe, as far as different pieces of the code. And then it recommended some modifications here, which, like it acknowledged, we had already had this portion correctly set up. This, from my understanding at the time, was correctly done. And then this portion here, I double checked. And again, the code was all correct on that portion. So honestly, you guys can tell it's not pleasant for me to not understand what I'm doing, because normally I do. But again, it's a completely new field. So it's part of the game. And actually, I don't even think that I had reset the React app, because I noticed when I had made the changes to the code and then I pressed save, I still got the same exact message that I was giving initially. So I pasted the message, and then it had said something about it being the version of the ETH that I was using, the ethers library I was using. So we had gone to the package.json and checked the version, which I pasted somewhere down here. But again, I mean, I skipped like a lot of steps instead of trying to just figure it out myself, trying to ask ChatGPT too much. So lesson learned, I mean, while I'm learning how to build front ends and build smart contracts, I am also learning how best to use ChatGPT. And today was a learning experience, starting off with the initial instructions and referring back to the initial as best as possible probably would have saved us quite a bit of time and headache. But nonetheless, it again walked us through this here. It suggested this as well. And I'm wondering if I'd adjusted this. Again, I'm still kind of having a little bit of a problem reading this myself. So yeah, next time I'm not going to just get hung up on trying to get all the nitty gritty details of every step because I pretty much grabbed the code under the package.json tab, which is here. And I copy and pasted this so ChatGPT could tell me information about the version. And after pasting this, it had mentioned that having both of these might have been the reason that was causing the conflict. So it wasn't even confirmed that that was the main issue. But essentially what it had me do was I uninstalled the ethers project / contracts, which that was the thing that I was wondering about whether it had me install back up here. Where is it at? There's just so much here. Too much to a degree. That's so strange too, because it had prompted us to install it here and then we uninstalled it. But when we uninstalled it, it caused a bunch of problems. But when we first never had it installed in the first place, we're able to run the initial React interface. So again, I'm not exactly sure. I might have just confused ChatGPT with asking for all the details and walkthroughs as to how to actually set things up. But we had uninstalled the ethers project / contracts. But again, after I'd immediately after, so again, this is me getting hung up on the first step. Immediately after I'd uninstalled the command, I got this message from the terminal, which I didn't even know how to really read this. I think this is actually something different here. This does look different. But I'd gotten a really long message just saying there was like a ton of different errors. 6 of them were high vulnerabilities. And given this is technically like to a degree a DeFi project, I wanted to make sure this was addressed. But again, it's me not really knowing what I'm doing. So I pasted this into ChatGPT, and then it had suggested running an audit. We'd gone through this whole process, the audit, we skipped the audit fix, which maybe we shouldn't have done, and we went straight to the audit fix force because on the terminal, it prompted us to do it. But after we had done that, then we got this whole super long message that, again, I didn't really know how to read it. And at this point, I've been sitting here for a few hours, so I'm a little overwhelmed. It had given us some walkthrough steps on how to troubleshoot, but this just became so much more complicated than the first steps it had given us. So at this point, I was, pretty much, like I said, I felt a little bit lost, and I let ChatGPT know. And just decided it'd be good to put a pin in it for the day, given it's now 10. I'm pretty sure it's 9 when I started recording, but we've gone through quite a bit of info for the day. So not every day can be a milestone or a winner, but today we did learn some lessons as far as using ChatGPT, and we were able to at least successfully find a method to get free test ETH without having to buy Ethereum and put it into a wallet beforehand. So again, not a milestone day, but we are learning as far as the process of using the tools that are going to go into building the projects. So tomorrow we're going to be back on. I don't know how long we're going to be able to work on things because I am going to be working with one of my buddies in the real estate space to do some stuff as far as like the hurricane relief, getting some damages repaired for people in the Tampa area. But we were able, like I said, to find a method to get free test ETH, and that'll, I suppose, be the main value adder that I will give you guys here within this video. Now, again, I noticed with ChatGPT, today I was getting hung up on a lot of these small steps, and I was asking for a lot of clarification, which ended up leading me down a road that by the end of it, I was a bit confused. So for reference, when we get back on, I'm going to be just trying to refer to the initial instructions as much as possible and working through as much as I can and just asking for clarification if I'm running into direct issues, rather for asking for confirmation before proceeding. So that'll be where we leave off for today. Hopefully, you guys are seeing a little bit of the back end behind this and, get to see a little bit as far as just the work that goes into setting all this stuff up, because I'm sure it'll be worth it once we all have it done and ready. But not every day is the most smooth day. So we got through it nonetheless, and we took some positives away from it. And with that being said, I will see you guys on the next video. Peace.